Thank you, Madam Deputy President. I'd also like to speak to the Rural and Regional Affairs and Transport Legislations Committee report in support of Angel Flight and the service that they provide to so many rural and regional families across this country, including the support that they provided to my own family for a number of years. When my son was diagnosed with autism back in 2019, so what are we, about 2012, and at that stage, pre the NDIS, we were reliant at that stage for assistance through state government, and it took 12 months for the state government to get in contact with us in Moree to see how they may be able to offer assistance to my son through disability support programs. Thankfully, we had not waited 12 months to help our son, because the key with autism is intensive and early intervention, and the key to that being early. So unfortunately, many families at that point in time were forced to wait. We had endeavoured to start on a very good, high-quality early intervention program out of Sydney, but that was requiring us to travel to Sydney every month, my son and myself, and at times with therapists that we were training to conduct the in-home element of the program. And the cost, when it was just my son and I, was often up to $2,000 return from Moree to Sydney, because of the $500 each way per person that was required to be paid. As you can imagine, $24,000 a year, that is not even for the therapy, let alone accommodation and other costs while you're in Sydney for 4 to 5 days a month, is not sustainable for many families. It certainly wasn't sustainable for us for a very long period of time. And so, facetiously suggesting to the state government they might be able to help fund my son's program, not being able to do that, their suggestion was that they could offer a referral to Angel Flight. Angel Flight was an absolute godsend to our family. It was the only service that we were able to access that we did not have to personally fund. And the insinuation that I have heard over the last couple of months in what would appear to be an almost determined act by CASA over a sustained period of time to somehow strangle this absolutely vital community service, and for reasons that are absolutely beyond me, that they are trying to take away a service that provides a vital lifeline for families, is just absolutely incomprehensible. And the most offensive part that I have heard is the suggestion that rural and regional families do not understand somehow that these flights are being conducted by non-commercial pilots. No, I can assure you we understand that. And Angel Flight does an exceptional job in educating the people that use the service. We are spoken to by Angel Flight. We are given lots and lots of information to read. We are signing pieces of paper not only when we first use the service, but every time we use the service. We are aware that the aircraft we're going to fly in is going to be of varying types of aircraft, that sometimes, and we had one flight in a particularly wonderful, brand new, incredibly impressive aircraft that had been just purchased by the managing partner of a very large consulting firm. We also had trips in much more less salubrious, smaller aircraft that we travelled at a much less comfortable opportunity to fly to Moree, but equally gratefully received by my family, and particularly my son and myself. But it is offensive to suggest that people in rural and regional communities are somehow unable to make an educated decision, to make that choice, and to make the decision to use the service. And to suggest, and whilst any accident that causes death and any accident that results in the death of anybody is tragic, the fact of the matter is there are more deaths on our roads that have ever been caused by accidents by this service And we do not see cries to shut down the transport via road of people with chronic illnesses, of people requiring care and access to therapy. And people need to be able to access these services. At one stage, we flew via Brewarrina from Moree with a number of families on a quite large plane with people who were suffering from breast cancer, and they could not make the trip themselves. They could not make the trip via road. This was a vital service for these people to actually be able to continue their life and prolong their life as long as was possible. So it is incredibly important that Angel Care receives the support that they can, and that they are not overly burdened by regulation, that they are not being put into a position where they are unable to provide this service that is so vital to so many families across rural and regional Australia. I would just like to particularly commend Senator Rex Patrick, Senator Susan McDonald and Senator Slade Brockman. I know that all of us share a passion for this service and appreciate the important role that it plays within the communities that we live in and represent, and understand the important work that it does. And I, for one, wish Angel Flight a very, very long existence, and for all the families that are currently utilising the service, I hope you don't need it for very much longer, but for the families that may require it in future, I hope that the service is there for you long into the future. Thank you.
Senator Brockman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy President. I too rise to take note of the same report, and in starting, as Senator Hughes has said, I acknowledge all those who participated in the inquiry. I would particularly like to thank the Secretariat for their work on an inquiry. I was a full member of the Rural and Regional Committee when this inquiry kicked off with the promulgation of the particular regulations we're talking about, and Senator Patrick and I and others, Senator O'Sullivan, who has left us subsequently, did have some concerns about those regulations, which have led us through the inquiry, very ably chaired by Senator McDonald, coming into this place as a new senator. It was a relatively probably a difficult issue, but may I acknowledge and thank you for your chairing of the inquiry hearings. As Senator Patrick mentioned earlier today, I did have some concerns about the ATSB report. You cannot blame government agencies for the way sometimes that their reporting is sensationalised in the media, talking about Angel Care flights being 7 times more dangerous. But unfortunately, that was made easy for the media to come up with those very inflammatory headlines because of the report that the ATSB produced. And I still remain concerned with the fact that their principal conclusion was based on 2 data points separated by 6 years over a 10-year period. I do find it very difficult to believe that you can draw statistically significant conclusions from such a data set, and it worries me that then when that information is used by a large number of media outlets to paint a particular view of the risks, because these risks, as Senator Hughes has so ably outlined, and Senator McDonald, are risks that are weighed up by people living in very remote parts of Australia. In my home state, if you live in Newdigate, you've got an 800-kilometre round trip to Perth if you need to see a specialist, if you need any particularly invasive hospital care or treatment, regular treatments for things such as cancer. If you live in Kew, you've got a 1,300-kilometre round trip. These are not on major highways. These are on country roads. And anyone who's driven on country roads, or anyone who has even looked at the statistics for driving on country roads, knows that there is a level of risk involved in taking those long trips on those country roads, of durations of sometimes 10 hours or more. and yes, there is risk involved in flying in light aircraft. There is no doubt about that. I think everyone in Australia, particularly everyone in the bush, knows that there are risks involved in flying in light aircraft. But to put the idea out there that somehow the statistics that we used represent a accurate portrait of what those risks are, I don't think is fair or reasonable. I didn't disagree with all the regulations. In fact, and I don't want to put words into the mouths of others, but I believe that most of us on the committee actually supported the majority of the regulation that was put forward. In particular, the requirements for pilots to be to have a certain level of experience and competence and time in the particular aircraft were sensible changes that would seem, on the face of it, to deliver a benefit, to deliver a safety benefit. However, the one that I found particularly difficult to accept, and this is the one that was highlighted in the committee's report, was the requirement for an additional level of aeroplane maintenance. Now, if I'm the owner of a private aircraft and that aircraft is safe enough for me to take my friends up in, is safe enough for me to take my children up in, has met the requirements of being considered a safe aircraft for the purpose of general aviation in Australia, then I see no reason to add on to that a further safety, a further maintenance requirement that risks more people leaving general aviation. All of us in this place who have anything to do with the bush spend some time in light aircraft. All of us in this place who have an interest in rural and regional affairs spend some time in light aircraft because there is just no other way of getting around rural and regional Australia. And in doing so, I know my experience in talking to GA operators and GA pilots throughout Western Australia is that that part of the industry does feel under significant pressure from regulations such as these. Additional maintenance requirements are not something just to be shrugged off. Pilots take them seriously. They have to be taken seriously. And so additional maintenance requirements, beyond those required for any plane in the general aviation sector, did not seem to me to be warranted. However, as I've already stated, I did agree with large parts of the regulation. As such, I did not support Senator Patrick's disallowance. It's a very blunt instrument, a disallowance. Unfortunately, it means you knock out everything. You literally throw the baby out with the bathwater. So it is something where I do have a great deal of concern for both the Angel Care pilots, the community flight pilots, and that sector, giving rural and regional Australians access to those services is very important. And I will continue to monitor this area very closely and look to see if the regulations as promulgated do have a negative impact on that sector. Thank you.